What's a stupid thing you've done that you still think WTF did I do that for? Part 6. This thread has brightened up my day. Years ago spotted my crush in the club. We were on flirty terms, so in my haste to make a beeline to him, I completely misjudged the steps down to where he was standing and landed sprawled at his feet. I don't remember him at all really, but I still cringe at his "I'll give you 1 out of 10 for that" entrance. We had a beautiful old chair which DH had recently glued as it had become wobbly. The glue had run down the frame of the backrest, so I picked it all off. Later I went to use the chair to place a bowl on top of a cupboard. DH said, "Don't stand on that, it's not safe." I did. Chair snapped in half. I went straight down onto a stone floor. A&E said it was the worst broken ankle they had ever seen. Still hurts 3 years later, and I limp now. Renovating our house, DH left me demolishing a hideous brick chimney surround. For some reason I started from the bottom, and obviously a pile of bricks fell on my hand from height. I sat and sobbed in the rubble. Was very badly bruised, but so lucky not to break anything. When we were kids we found a huge plastic barrel in a field. It was enormous and us 4 9 to 10-year-old kids all fitted into it easily. So we did what any self-respecting kid of that age would do and dragged it to the top of a huge hook, climbed inside and rolled down. It went a hell of a lot faster than we expected and only stopped when it smacked into wall. My sister broke her nose, and we thought my friend was dead as she was knocked unconscious. Oh, and did I mention the vomiting on the way down, and spinning round covered in it like we were in a giant washing machine. I decided to be arty-farty and paint the floorboards in our bedroom. Like a knob, I started at the door and painted myself into the corner. DH nearly broke a rib laughing, and my kids were too amused and kept offering to chuck me food like a sea lion in a zoo getting fish. A camembert I baked slid off the tray when I was taking it out the oven. I caught it with my hand. It was like molten lava, and I ended up getting treatment at the burns unit. In a hurry making quick lunch of buttered crumpet with honey, yum, but dregs of honey in plastic squeezy bottle was solid. As I was in a rush made daft decision to pop it in microwave to melt it, returned to table, and as I tipped it towards my crumpet a jet of molten lava honey sprayed out onto my hand. I have never moved so fast to the sink to run cold water on it. It was so hot that something which hit a piece of paper nearby blackened it. My hand was badly burned, but honestly, I was happy it had hit me and not my daughter in the high chair beside me. I decided to test whether a knife was too sharp for a child to use cutting dough by dragging the blade across my palm. It was too sharp. On a school trip, someone persuaded me to get into the shower with him before he got out, because it will go cold otherwise, and I then had the awkward situation that he didn't get out as I had somehow imagined he would, as I got in. He was physically repulsive, and I just didn't see this coming at all. We both stood there for a while until he finally got out. I didn't dare look down. We were the 2 teachers in charge of the trip. Oh God. So many. Mostly horse-related. Turning my horse out in the field, she saw something in the distance and whipped her head round, but didn't bother about fact mine was in the way. No idea how I got home. Rang work to tell them I wouldn't be in, was definitely concussed. They were quite worried as I was apparently talking about a cat landing on my head, so they sent a first aid around to check on me. Luckily by the time she arrived I was fine, just a very large lump on my head for a while. My mum wondered what would happen if she put her whole hand in my young horse's mouth. She was very upset when he bit his grandma. Not the pain, but the fact he'd bitten his grandma. I did wonder what she thought was going to happen. Riding my horse knowing the saddle wasn't right, and if I wasn't careful it would slip. Horse was somewhat fresh and went full on rodeo. I didn't last long after saddle went underneath his stomach. Trying to fasten my horse's girth, Hand slipped and I punched myself very hard in the face. Thoroughly sleep deprived following birth of DD number 1. Made myself some pasta for dinner as DH was at work. Took the pan of pasta off the hob, and rather than strain it over the sink, I strained it stood by the cooker, pouring boiling hot water all over my feet. Idiot. Balanced a boiling hot cup of tea on my knee whilst wearing a nightshirt. I was on the phone to my best friend at the time. I jerked at the hot tea, went all over my crotch and upper thighs. It made me scream, it was so painful. I'm sure the poor girl thought I was being murdered. So embarrassing. Hope you are enjoying today's video from Mother's Narrative Network. Please like, comment and subscribe for more daily uploads. Don't forget to click the notification bell. Well, there was the time I was slicing the remains of a boneless rolled turkey that we'd cooked for Christmas. There was quite a bit, so I decided to slice it all so could be frozen. Very efficient, don't I know. So sliced a bit and then had to cut a bit of the string that held it together. Was having problems, so turned the knife to slice under the string, which meant the knife was pointing at my left hand, which was holding the whole thing. Of course the knife slipped and I inserted a good portion of an 8-inch butcher's knife into my hand. Cue screams for help. DH, the sympathetic ass, patched me up while suggesting that I shouldn't have tried to cut the string that way, and I certainly should have been using a fork to hold the roast instead of my hand. I once tried to get out of the car without taking my seatbelt off, in front of teenage Bil and his friends. I took 2 blunt knives to be sharpened. On the way there I wrapped them in newspaper, and all was well. On the way back, I also wrapped them in newspaper and put them in my gold leather tote bag, which fitted snugly over my shoulder and under my arm. When I got home, I took off my down-filled jacket, and a cloud of feathers floated into the air. My newly sharp and pointy knives had made multiple tiny slices through my beautiful bag and through my jacket. They were both ruined and had to be thrown away. I was very lucky they hadn't also pierced multiple holes in my rib cage and armpits. 2 days later, I dropped one of my lovely sharp knives and the point snapped off in 2 places. This is one my DH did. Driving down the motorway in France and the roof box pings open, sending pillows, sleeping bags etc. into the carriageway. He parks on the hard shoulder and runs across the luckily quiet motorway to collect everything. He gets everything back miraculously, and I think he puts it all in the boot. We have some string, so he begins trying to tie it shut with that. Police turn up, he explains, and they tell him to drive to next service station and buy straps to keep it closed properly. Police leave, we pull out, and within 5 minutes the roof box has popped open again, and the contents are again bouncing along the motorway. Motorway has suddenly got busier, so not possible to retrieve contents. Drive to service station, minus all the bedding for our holiday. I was livid with him at the time for being daft enough to put everything back in the box after it opened the first time. DH is an optimist and never thinks bad things will happen, certainly not twice, so things like this happen to him all the time. Aside from marrying my ex-H, I have done many stupid things, some more life-endangering than others. Walked away from a cash point once, forgetting to take the £500 I'd withdrawn to pay the rental deposit on a flat. Waited a few nail-biting days to find out that the machine had sucked the money back in before anyone else could take it, thankfully. I set my kitchen entirely on fire when I was about 10. I'd put a plastic Tupperware lid with chocolate on to melt. Why? Promptly forgot about it. Came back to the oven, hob and kitchen cupboards blazing. I told Mum I was making toast for my sister, so she didn't bury me under the patio. The firefighters thought it was hilarious, thankfully. When I was 15, I got a train from Norwich to Bristol to meet a boy I'd talked to on MySpace, confused, thank God he wasn't a 60-year-old man that ended up murdering me. We're still friends 18 years later. And then there was the time I had spotted a monster spider playing hide and seek around the smoke detector above our bed. Now in some ways I couldn't care less. I'm actually rather fond of spiders, even the huge ones. Then again, I don't really want it crawling over me during the night. And I certainly don't want my DH spotting it, as he would scream the house down. So loving wife that I decide to hop up on the bed to capture but kill the creature. This seems fairly easy, but I had a knee replacement a few weeks earlier and was still a bit unstable when standing, so stepping up onto the bed was more difficult than I had anticipated. But I got up there with tissues ready in my hand and reached up to crunch the spider. That's when I realized that it was a bit too far for me to stretch, so I bounced a bit on the bed. The tissues made contact with the spider and I came down a bit hard on my bad leg, which collapsed under me. I fell over backwards diagonally across the bed and crashed with my shoulder against the corner of the bedside table. As I lay there trying to get my breath back, I flashed back to all those TV shows about accidental deaths and realized how close I had been from truly serious injury, or worse, if I'd hit my head instead of my shoulder. It was only after a couple more minutes that I remembered what I had been trying to do and fortunately discovered I still had the tissues clenched tightly in my hand and they contained well-mashed spider. OMG, quite a few, but a recent one, which I'm embarrassed to tell people about, is driving through 3 speed cameras in 2 weeks and getting 6 points. One of them I could do a course for. The worst thing is one of them is by my house, and I know it's 30 miles per hour. But for some reason speeded through it twice. Duh. Go out with my ex for so long. He was a complete tosser, and I didn't see that until a long while after. I started going out with him when I was quite young. He worked in the city, always had money, and I admit I was quite dazzled. My dad always warned against him, but who heeds their parents at that age? You always know better, don't you? I went out with him on and off for years before I finally got myself together and ditched him. I ended up in the witness box at the Old Bailey giving evidence against him when he used my name and home address in a scam with 5 other blokes. Thank God he got sent down, because if my dad had got his hands on him, I think he would have killed him, which is saying something, as my dad was gentle and kind and always thought the best of everyone. Ran out of dishwasher liquid in the busy kitchen I worked at, so tried using washing up liquid instead. Went on a girls' trip to New York City when I was 21 at Christmas. We got to hotel about 7 p.m. and ordered room service. The girls fell asleep early and I was bored, so went for a walk on my own. Ended up in a very dodgy part on my own. Think blatant drug addicts and prostitutes hanging around on corners, run-down shops, etc. Stood on the edge of the pavement and a man turned up in a car, said he was a taxi. I was so desperate to get back to hotel I got in. Luckily for me, he didn't rape or murder me. I did have to wait in his locked car outside a phone repair shop for 40 minutes whilst he got his mobile fixed. Got back to the hotel, then realized how stupid I'd been and was awake all night with adrenaline rush. Girls nearly killed me when they woke up and I told them. In Jamaica, I tried to catch a glass bottle that had fell out the mini bar, but it smashed and a piece came flying up and sliced through my finger. Still have no feeling in it as went through my nerve. Had to have stitches with no anesthetic. Tried to catch a pan of boiling water with spaghetti in it. Spaghetti stuck to hands and still have scars now. When I was 15, I got drunk on absinthe and walked 2 hours home down country lanes, no street lights, open fields. Don't remember actually walking home, just the odd flashback. But I do remember I was ill for 3 days after. Going upstairs, I decided not to do so empty-handed. I can't recall what I was going to take. So I changed direction, thinking I was only a step above the wide bottom step, not further up the narrow ones, putting my foot confidently ahead. As I'd taken my hand off the banisters to turn, I went forward and put my foot into thin air. Down I tumbled, putting a hand out to break my fall. What the hell? I broke 2 bones each in my hand and arm. broke my nose and knocked my front teeth out. 7 hours in A&E, who were still mopping up the Saturday night drunks. In plaster overnight, with strapping on fingers and stitches in nose and mouth, dental splint to try and save teeth. The breaks were simple and healed, but dental work is another matter, have a temporary denture. I'm halfway through getting implants with metalwork in my gums. It takes time to heal between each process, and then COVID came along. This April it'll be 3 years since the fall. But I could have broken my neck. Hey ho, I'm alive. I approach stairs with great caution now. I was taking out a bin bag of rubbish at 3 a.m. I had been working a combination of nights and days, and my sleep pattern was thoroughly disrupted. It was raining, there were 5 steps down to the bin. I was wearing flip-flops. I slipped on step 1 and fell forward, still clutching the bin bag, and bumped onto step 2, 3, 4 and 5 and landed in a heap at the bottom. Somehow I managed to crawl back into the house and yelled for help. DH was on a night shift, but I had 4 sleeping children. Eventually my youngest Didi heard and came to find me. She was 9. She called 999 and then her dad. I had broken my pelvis in several places and torn my femoral artery. She came with me to A&E and stayed with me until DH arrived. I was in hospital for 17 weeks after that little episode, and even now, I can't understand why putting the rubbish out was so important. Thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed today's video. Before you go, please like, comment, and subscribe for more daily uploads. Don't forget to click the notification bell.